City of Johannesburg is facing a deepening revenue collection and billing crisis. For years, frustrated residents have been battling inflated bills, unexpected service cuts, and a lack of accountability. Now, with the city's finances under strain, this crisis is spilling over into service delivery. Let's talk about it all with Angela Rivers, who is the General Manager at the Johannesburg Property Owners and Managers Association. Angela, good morning to you. Let's start with the billing problem. We know it is 16 years in the making. Why can't we fix it?
Good morning, Iman. Thank you so much for having me. I think we've got to a point now where some of these issues are so complex that I don't think the city has the staff capacity or knowledge to even, or the will to fix some of the more complex issues. It depends on who you're speaking to. Some people say that there's a lot of, there is definitely corruption that we know of, but a lot of people are saying that there's a lot of sabotage as well. It doesn't deter from the fact that people are getting huge bills, incorrect tariffs, incorrect meter readings, estimates for months. It's a crisis. It's a billing crisis.
I want to go back to the corruption and sabotage because, look, we'll talk about the new presidential group and all the plans that are afoot to try and course correct, and we'll get to the Eskom spat in just a moment. But there are things that are just in the system, that they are systemic, and while they are systemic, they're also within our purview, in the city administrator's purview, to fix. So just widen the aperture on those two particular issues, the corruption and sabotage. What is that exactly?
So, obviously with the work that I do, I'm exposed to a lot of different complex issues. And what we have seen is that the corruption starts pretty much from the ground up. So we're talking about your City Power, Joburg water contractors who will come onto site and threaten to remove your meter or disconnect your services unless you pay them R1,000. The latest thing is that if you owe the city money, they'll help you sign an AOD for a fee with only 10% deposit, which if anyone who signed an AOD, you have to pay a 50% deposit, and it needs to be done in the legal department. So it really starts from that level. And, if a contractor is offering to get an AOD signed for you, then it means that there's someone in the office that's willing to sign the AOD for a City Power contractor and not the owner of the building. It's been a long-standing joke in the city that if you have an outstanding bill, you can have a briefcase agreement in the parking lot, which over the years, every mayor that has been around, I have informed them of this. They know it. Everyone knows it. But it's just, I think that it goes so deep that I think a lot of the people who are part of the corruption are very well protected.
Well, what's an AOD?
An AOD is an acknowledgement of debt.
Okay.
So it's the city's way of kind of forcing you to acknowledge that even if your bill is incorrect, if you want your services reconnected, you can sign an AOD, but then you're acknowledging that you owe the money, even if you have an outstanding issue on your account.
And I want to go back to that framework of functionality, or dysfunctionality, as the case happens to be in the city of Johannesburg. And I want to pick up the thread with my chat with Angela Rivers, who is the Johannesburg Property Owners and Managers Association General Manager. Angela, before we stop talking, you were sharing with us the picture of corruption and sabotage in the city. You said that there was no knowledge or will in many cases of how to really fix and to course correct here in the city of Johannesburg. But you did mention mayors as well. And I think what was so concerning is that we've had, I think since 2021, 8 mayors. There's been a revolving door of mayors in the city as well. How do we push for the longevity of mayors and to stop this, a political football of who gets this position, when really, the mayor's role is to ensure that there is that executive oversight, that people do what they're supposed to do, spend the money like they're supposed to spend it?
So that's a very tough question, because I can tell you some of the best mayors that we've had have been the ones that have tried to weed out the corruption, and they have been removed because of that. So the question is, how far does our mayor really want to go, and how deep does he want to go to really put his reputation on the line to get rid of the corruption? Because we've seen it with 2 previous mayors who went really deep into lifestyle audits and really trying to weed out all of the corruption, and they didn't last very long. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
I want to go to this next thing. I mean, the overbilling is a massive, massive issue. We know that the City of Johannesburg's debt to Eskom is north of 6.9 billion rand. We saw that Eskom said, hey, you better pay this. We're putting you on notice and we're going to cut you off. The city's retaliated and given its own explanation, even though that they haven't honoured their payment commitments to Eskom itself. So how do you see this row between COJ and Eskom playing out and its impact on the residents of the city?
So, look, I mean, I was part of one of the committees that was put together to kind of work with both Eskom and City Power. And it is quite a complex issue surrounded by a lot of non-disclosure agreements that have been signed and a lot of blame. I think that the bottom line is Eskom can't afford to disconnect City Power, and City Power can't afford to admit that they don't have the money to pay. So it's kind of a circle of blaming each other and trying to figure out whose fault it is. The reality is, because the City Power is under collecting, overbilling, they don't have the money to pay Eskom. And you know, if we do get to a situation where Eskom does decide to disconnect, the residents will suffer the most. And we've seen what happens when Eskom implements load shedding. Even from that point of view, you know, the amount of businesses and residents that are affected by it. So it's it's very complex, and it's deep rooted in a lot of issues. But I think it boils down to billing not being done correctly.
So the presidential Joburg working group formation has now been constituted. It's going to provide what we are told, a coordinated support for the city over the next 2 years. What is your impression of their prospects for success? How is it going to ease the lives of the residents here, making sure that it does fix, among others, the billing crisis?
So look, we obviously welcome the intervention. We've been asking for it for years. It is frustrating that it's suddenly now that there's an international opportunity on the doorstep that everything is being done, although we're very happy that it is being done. My biggest concern is that it doesn't become a situation of, you know, whenever you have your family over for Christmas, all your rubbish is chucked into the back room and the spare room and the drawers, and then it sits there. You know, that's kind of the analogy that I've been playing with in my head, and that this is actually long-term and it is sustainable. The only way that it will become sustainable is through the private-public partnerships, because the reality is the municipality, the provincial government, they can't do it on their own. We've been doing it on our own for the last 20 years. We have the experience. We've pumped the money into the city. So let's work together and make sure that it lasts beyond the G20.